So I've been wanting to try out using one of these wooden wreaths from the Dollar Tree. And for this craft, we're going to start with one of those wood wreaths and some of our favorite ribbons and zip ties. Next, I'm going to measure out my ribbon. And I'm starting out by measuring them out into 8-inch pieces. And we're going to need 12 pieces of ribbon in each one of these colors. And once we have our ribbon cut out, I go back and dovetail each one of these pieces of ribbon. And now that we have our ribbon all prepped, we're going to go ahead and start putting together our wreath. I start by stacking our ribbon in an X shape until I have 3 pieces of ribbon all nice and stacked up. Next, I'm going to cinch that ribbon right in the center of that X. And using my zip tie, I'm going to go ahead and attach that to our wreath. And before I tighten the zip tie all the way, I flip the wreath form over and just fluff my bow and make sure it's even the way I would like, and then I finish tightening up that zip tie. Next, I just go ahead and trim the extra piece of the zip tie right off. And now we repeat this step again, adding another ribbon at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then again at 9 o'clock. That way they're evenly spread out before we put the next set of ribbons on. And for our remaining 8 sets of ribbons, we're going to put 2 ribbons between each one of these ribbons that are already on our wreath form. And once all of your ribbons are attached, I just flip the wreath form over and fluff everything out to make sure everything looks nice and full. Next, we're going to add some embellishments to our wreath. I found this adorable carrot patch sign at the Dollar Tree and absolutely fell in love with it. So what I'm going to do here is just hot glue that right to the center of our wreath. You're putting the hot glue right onto those zip ties to make it a little bit easier to center this into the wreath. While the hot glue is setting, I just used my pink clips to hold everything in place. Now, I didn't want my zip ties to show on my craft, so what I'm doing here is taking some half beads and I'm hot gluing them to the center of each of the bows that still show after I've added the sign to this wreath. Now, this carrot sign from the Dollar Tree is beautiful on its own, but to give it a little bit more dimension, I am going to add a bow right to the center of this sign on top of the bow that's on the sign itself. So it gives it this like pop in the center of the sign. And now this amazing wreath is ready to hang on your door for the spring season. I love how this turns out. Up next, I'm going to show you how to take these little carrots and make a cute little carrot patch. So I'm taking these carrots that I got at the Dollar Tree and I'm putting a few of them on a paintable surface. I'm taking some Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, and we're taking a big round brush and just going to dry brush these carrots to give them a little bit more of a muted look. When I'm done painting these carrots, I remove the little pieces of stem from these carrots. Next, I grabbed this fun boxwood that I got at Walmart, and I absolutely love this boxwood. And I'm going to dry brush some little pieces of boxwood as well. And what is great about these little carrots is there's going to be like a little hole left over where the old stems were once at. And all you have to do is take a little bit of hot glue and you can just add those boxwoods to the top, and it elevates these carrots to a whole new look. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I walk by something at the Dollar Tree and I'm like, what could I do with that? I really think that piece is so cute. And this is one of those pieces that I kept walking by and I put it down like 3 times, and I finally am like, no, I'm going to buy this and I'm going to take this home and we're going to find a way to incorporate this into a craft. So I started out by just painting the whole entire thing using the color Elephant by Waverly chalk paint. So for this next step here, I'm using a self-adhesive stencil, and I had gotten the stencil back in the fall from Amazon, and I'll put a link of it in my description box below for you guys. Using some redesigned chalk paste in the color Vintage Lace, and we'll just squeegee that over the top of our stencil. And once we've gotten that squeegeed over the top, I'm just going to peel that away. After our paint has dried from the stencil, I grab my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster again, and using a dry brush, I'm going to dry brush over the top of the roof. And now it's time to plant our patch and add those carrots right back in. Doesn't this little patch look so perfect? I love how this turned out. I get a lot of comments from you guys about my decoupage, and so for this little craft here, I am going to decoupage a pickle jar. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out by taking some white Waverly chalk paint and paint a nice coat of paint around the whole entire jar. And while the jar is drying, I'm going to grab some Waverly chalk paint in the color Elephant, and I'm going to take that paint and paint the lid of the jar. While we have that elephant color paint out, I'm going to grab this cute little styrofoam bunny rabbit that I got from the Dollar Tree last year, and I'm just putting that onto a skewer, and we're going to paint the bunny rabbit the same color. What I love about putting this on a skewer is I can just stick that skewer into a cup and it can just be set aside to dry. On to the decoupage. This napkin is from Home Goods, and we're just removing the back 2 layers. Once we have done that, we're going to prep our jar. To prep our jar, I'm going to place it on top of an egg carton. And what I'm doing by doing that is it's giving me an extra set of hands. Next, I grabbed my Mod Podge, and I did not get this on camera, but I painted a coat of the Mod Podge over the top of the paint on the areas that you can see when you're looking down at the egg carton. I'm going to use cling wrap for this next step as well. So we're going to take our napkin and layer that right on top of that Mod Podge. For your next layer, you're going to use some cling wrap over the top of the napkin. Then you're going to take your hands and just smooth the cling wrap around the jar. And this will take a minute, but once you're done, we'll peel that cling wrap away, and the Mod Podge will just be set there to dry for about a half an hour. So a half an hour went by, and I wanted to make sure everything was really dry before I flipped this jar over. So I did use my heat tool just to ensure that everything was nice and dry. And once we have our jar flipped over on the egg carton, I'm going to just make sure that everything fits fine with the napkin, which it does. And now I will grab my Mod Podge, and I'm going to paint a nice coat of Mod Podge over the top of all of that white paint. And very carefully, we're going to pull up the napkin and cover the whole entire jar. Next, you guessed it, we're going to grab that cling wrap again, and we're going to place a layer of that cling wrap over the top and smooth out that napkin over the Mod Podge on the jar. Once everything is dry, I'm going to go ahead and take some scissors and cut any of the extra napkin off of our jar. To seal this jar, we're going to use another layer of Mod Podge. So you'll see me here just painting a coat of Mod Podge around the whole entire jar. Now let's put this jar together. I'm going to take my cute little bunny and hot glue that to the lid. Let's add the lid to our jar, and our piece is complete. This is a perfect little jar to stash some change into, use as a decor piece. I've been using it as a decor piece with some wrapped candy inside. For our next craft today, we're going to make a bunny wreath. I'm using a wreath form that I got from the Dollar Tree and this fun chunky yarn that I got at Walmart. So to start this bunny out, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the yarn around the ears of the bunny, and then I'm going to continue wrapping down the circle portion of this bunny wreath. So we're going to fill that whole circle portion in with the chunky yarn. And to ensure that the chunky yarn stays in place, I'm using hot glue every other wrap or so, just to make sure everything stays in place. So now that we have the bottom half of our bunny completely wrapped, let's start wrapping the ear. I start by just tying a quick little knot at the bottom piece of the ear, and then I hot glue that knot into the circle piece of the bunny. And now we just wrap the yarn around the ears. And I'm just going to wrap the outside piece of the ears, and I'm not going to fill in the center for these. And when we get to the end of the second ear, I'm just going to cut the yarn and then stick the yarn into the center piece of this bunny and hot glue it into place. So now let's add a little simple bow to our bunny. If you'd like to learn how to make this bow, I'll link a video above here that you can check out to make this bow. And that's it. I just hot glue the bow into place and our adorable bunny is ready to display. This is a great neutral piece for the spring. So this is a fun, easy craft that you can do while watching TV or hanging out with the kids. All you need is some twine and 5 different size wood beads that kind of go from bigger to smaller. And the first thing I'm going to do with these beads is I'm going to put them in a plastic freezer bag. And I like the freezer bags because they're a little bit thicker, and with pouring some paint and water in there, I don't want any leaks. And then we just seal the bag and we're just going to mush around these beads. And this is just going to lightly color our beads, and there will be a nice light off-white color. Now once we're done coloring our beads, I'm going to put on some gloves and just carefully remove the beads, and I'm just placing them on a paper towel to dry. And once those beads have dried, I grabbed some gray colored twine, and I got this twine from the Dollar Tree. They get it from time to time in their Crafter Square section. Now the fun part, we're going to arrange the beads in a little line going from largest to smallest, and this is going to be how we're going to set up our cute little carrots. And oh my gosh, these are just so adorable. You guys are gonna love them. So I'm just going to string these from smallest to largest onto my twine. And I started out by just stringing the whole entire set of beads, but you could string them up individually if you liked. I just found it was easier to just do a big long stretch for me. And once I got that done, I just separated them out into little carrot pieces. We got our little beads all strung up into little carrot pieces. I'm going to take a little bit more of my twine, and I used 5 pieces of twine, and I'm going to just tie them around the knot that I tied at the top of this little carrot. And we're just going to continue doing that till all the strings are attached. To unravel those strings, so all I'm doing here is I'm taking a basic comb, and I'm just going to comb all the way through those pieces of twine until it looks like a little carrot top. If needed, just go ahead and give your carrot a little haircut on top. And once that is complete, I'm going to take some black and white ribbon, and I'm just going to add a little bow to the top of our carrots. So as an alternate method to making these carrots, you can take some boxwood or some greenery, and this boxwood I did get at Walmart, and I'm just going to trim the excess string off the top of these carrots. Now let's trim up our little piece of boxwood and fit that into the top piece of the carrot. And once you know that the greenery is gonna fit, I put a dab of hot glue inside the top piece of the bead and then insert the greenery so it has a good secure place to be. And now for the finishing touch. We just add a little gingham bow to the top of our carrot. Carrots are ready to display. What color would you make your carrots? Let me know in the comments below. So one of my favorite things to do is to decoupage, and I found this beautiful napkin on Amazon, and I got this big box of eggs on Amazon as well. So I'm going to take this napkin, and we're just going to go ahead and unfold it and remove the back layer of the napkin. For For this next step, I just grabbed my scissors and I'm going to cut out some of these flowers that are in the napkin. And I want to make sure that there are a whole bunch of different shapes and sizes so that it'll be easier to fill the egg. Grab my matte Mod Podge and I'm going to just paint a small section of the egg, and I'm going to lay out some of these napkins over the top of that piece. I do use my Mod Podge and just kind of paint that back down into place. And I don't want to do a whole bunch on this egg to start. I just want to do enough on one side to where I can set this aside to dry, and I'll start on another egg while I'm doing this. Now, once the Mod Podge has dried on the one side of the egg, I can go ahead and come back around and finish the other side of the egg. It does take about 20 minutes for each egg to dry on each side, so that's why I kind of do these in batches. It's kind of fun to do 3 or 4 or 5 of them of the same type or different types of napkins. These eggs that I got on Amazon, they do have a small hole on the bottom of the egg, so you can add a skewer to the bottom if that makes it easier for you to put your Mod Podge on and do your decoupaging that way as well. So if you're like me, you probably have a stash of napkins that you've used for crafting if you're a decoupager. So you can use any of your napkins that you have in your stash. If they have small little pieces on them, these work great for adding to your eggs. So I had these ones that had some fun butterflies and flowers, so we use those as well. And here is our finished product. I love how these eggs turned out. Aren't they so cute? This next craft is a 2-part craft. We're starting out by painting some adorable eggs that we're going to put inside a decoupage basket. These plastic eggs I did get at the Dollar Tree, and what I like about these eggs is that there is a hole on the bottom of these eggs that allow for you to put a skewer inside of them. And as you can see, these skewers are well used. I just keep reusing them in my craft room. For my first layer of paint, I'm using the Waverly chalk paint in the color Sandstone. And I'm doing a nice coat of paint over all of the eggs. And I ended up doing 2 coats of this sandstone just to make sure that the gold color was covered. And once the eggs are completely dry, I'm taking some of my Waverly chalk paint, and this time I'm using the color Ballet Slipper, and it's a pink color, and we're just going to dry brush that over the top of the egg. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone that has subscribed. I really appreciate it. I would not be able to do this without you guys, so thank you so much. And if you're enjoying this content, if you could hit that subscribe button below, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So once the pink paint has dried, I'm going to go ahead and dry brush another layer over the top of that. And this time I'm using the color Plaster from Waverly Chalk. Now let's go ahead and set these eggs aside to dry. And while those are drying, let's get started on our basket. So this spring, Dollar Tree has come out with a lot more wood boxes in their Crafter Square section. And this is one of those boxes. Now, I gloved up for this because this can get a little bit messy, but I'm using my Waverly wax in the color Antique Wax, and I'm just taking a baby wipe and I'm staining the whole entire box, inside and out. And once everything has dried, I take my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I'm just going to dry brush this with a round brush. Now, once I'm done dry brushing this, I'll set this aside to dry. Let's grab out our napkin. I found this napkin at Home Goods during the Valentine's Day season, and I just love that the flowers in this were so full of spring. I'm going to use this in this piece. We're using a small wood bunny from the Dollar Tree, and I previously painted it in the color Plaster that I did not show on camera. And after the paint has dried, I took some of my Mod Podge in matte, and I'm just going to go ahead and do a nice coat over the top of my bunny. Now grab your napkin. Once we have the top layer of the napkin positioned on the bunny the way we would like, I grabbed a piece of parchment paper, and you could grab an iron or a heat press and just iron that napkin right on top of the bunny and the Mod Podge. Using the hot iron, you're reactivating the Mod Podge so it allows the napkin to adhere nicely to your bunny. Now I take my zip sander and I'm just going to sand down in a downward motion around the outside edge of my bunny. If you don't have a zip sander, a sanding block or some sandpaper will work just fine. Now using some wood glue, I'm going to glue the bunny onto our wood box. And once our bunny is completely attached to our box, I'm taking some Spanish moss and I'm filling the box up. Now let's grab the eggs that we painted earlier and add them to our box. And now this project is complete. I think this turned out adorable. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So for this craft, we're going to do some crackling eggs, and we're going to do them some different ways so you can see how the crackle goes different depending on how you do your brush strokes. So I'm starting out by adding my eggs to a skewer just to make it so much easier to paint them. As you can see there, I have a small jar. You can use a small jar, a cup. This works out really nice to be able to set your skewers in while you're painting your next egg. This first egg I painted in Waverly chalk paint in the color Truffle. Now while that is drying, I'm going to grab out some Elmer's glue and I'm just going to put that in a little bowl so it's easier to use. Now let's go ahead and paint some of that Elmer's glue onto our egg. And as you can see here, I'm taking my paintbrush and going up and down the egg, going down from the top and then back up from the bottom. And this is going to give a different look than if we did it the opposite way. So I want you to just kind of take note of that. Now, while the glue is still wet, we're going to go ahead and paint over the top with some vintage tea rose by Folk Art. And when I'm going over the glue with the paint, I'm going in the same direction for this egg. So we're going to get a totally different look by doing this. So let's check this out. And once our whole egg is painted, we're going to grab our heat tool or hair dryer and watch the crackling magic begin by drying the paint and the glue. As you see the cracks form on this egg while it's drying, you'll see that the cracks are kind of going in a downward motion, almost like the grain in wood. Let's try this again with another egg. So this egg is also painted in the color Truffle, and we're going to go in the up and down motion with the glue as well on this one. Now here's the difference. So we're going to paint this one in the color Plaster by Waverly chalk paint, but instead of going up and down, we're going to go in a circular motion around the egg. So you can kind of twist the egg as you're painting, and you can see how I'm going in the different direction than we painted the glue. And now that that's completely painted, let's grab our dryer and see the crackling begin. And you're going to notice that the crackling is going to go in the opposite direction. So it's all about your painting and how you decide to do your strokes to get your crackles in your eggs. And here's how this one turns out. I really like the crackling effect that this makes. So here's a side-by-side example of both of the different effects that we did with the eggs. I'm just fascinated with the different look that each of these crackling effects do for the eggs. Which crackling effect do you like better? Effect number 1, where we went up and down for each of the paint and the glue, or effect number 2, where we did the glue going up and down, but the paint going in a circular motion. Let me know in the comments below. Now let's make some easy egg ornaments. These plastic eggs I did get at the Dollar Tree, and what I like about these eggs is that there is a hole on the bottom of these eggs that allow for you to put a skewer inside of them. And as you can see, these skewers are well used. I just keep reusing them in my craft room. For my first layer of paint, I'm using the Waverly chalk paint in the color Sandstone. And I'm doing a nice coat of paint over all of the eggs. And I ended up doing 2 coats of this sandstone just to make sure that the gold color was covered. And once the eggs are completely dry, I'm taking some of my Waverly chalk paint, and this time I'm using the color Ballet Slipper, and it's a pink color, and we're just going to dry brush that over the top of the egg. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone that has subscribed. I really appreciate it. I would not be able to do this without you guys, so thank you so much. And if you're enjoying this content, if you could hit that subscribe button below, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So once the pink paint has dried, I'm going to go ahead and dry brush another layer over the top of that. And this time I'm using the color Plaster from Waverly Chalk. Now let's go ahead and set these eggs aside to dry. While those eggs are drying, I grabbed some of these leftover flowers that I had from a previous craft, and I only had 2 flowers left. So what I was doing is just tearing apart the petals off of the flowers, and I'm going to use these with my eggs. Now I have these little hooks that will fit right inside the bottom of these eggs where the hole is. I'm going to randomly take 2 of the pieces of petals and put them on top of each other. And using this little eye hook that I got in my package of eggs from Amazon, I am going to stick that eye hook through the petals and into the bottom of these eggs. And now to make my hanger, I'm just going to string some ribbon through that eye hook and tie a tiny knot. Now you just repeat this step till all your ornaments are finished. Now if you don't have an eye hook, you can stuff the ribbon into the little hole in the top of your egg using a skewer. Now your little eggs are ready to hang on your Easter tree. And I think these just turned out so sweet. Let me know in the comments below if you do an Easter tree. So I found this beautiful napkin at Home Goods last week, and I'm taking some wood ornaments from the Dollar Tree, and we're going to put them together to make a beautiful Easter treat. So let's get started. Using some Waverly chalk paint in the color white, we're going to give a nice coat of paint to our little carrot here. And once that paint has completely dried, I grabbed some Mod Podge, and we're just going to give another coat of Mod Podge over the top of the paint. And now that our Mod Podge is completely dried, I grabbed that napkin from Home Goods, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the back 2 layers of the napkin. And I use a piece of painter's tape to assist me, especially with that second layer. It does take a little bit of work to get that off of our napkin. And the napkin is almost translucent once you've done doing that. But you can totally see the pattern once you put that over the top of our white paint. Now let's grab a piece of parchment paper and lay that over the top of the napkin. I'm using a heat press, but you can use a hot iron as well. I've used those in the past. And you just go ahead and you iron on the napkin. So I'm going to trim the remainder of the napkin off of this little carrot, and I'll save that napkin to use on my little bunnies. Next, I grab a zip sander, or you could just grab a sanding block, and I sand around the edges of our little carrot. Now go ahead and grab some Mod Podge, and we're going to paint that over the top of the napkin to seal everything in. And now that we have the carrot done, we're going to go ahead and repeat this step for our little bunnies. Now I started out with the bunnies facing the same direction, and I realized halfway through the craft that I wanted the bunnies to be looking at each other. So I ended up having to make a third bunny to make sure I had ones that were looking the opposite direction and looking at could look at each other. So while our bunnies and carrots are drying, let's go ahead and make some embellishments. I'm starting out here with some white yarn from the Dollar Tree and using the little pom-pom maker. This one came in a 2-pack, and this is the smaller pom-pom maker that came with the 2-pack. I go ahead and I start wrapping my yarn around that little pink flap that comes out. And you just wrap that all the way around until you're satisfied with the thickness. And then I go ahead and I cut the piece of yarn and then repeat the same step on the other side of the pom-pom maker. Once you have both of your little wraps done on your little pink arms, we'll go ahead and we'll fold this in together to make a circle. And for the next step here, you really want a pair of sharp pointy scissors. And I take those scissors and I'm just going to insert that into the little groove that's in that pink flap. And you just cut the string as you go along. And make sure you're holding this tight because right now you haven't tied anything together yet. Then I take a small piece of the yarn, about 5 inches, and we're going to go ahead and just insert that in the groove all the way around and then tie a knot. I tied it 3 times because I really wanted to make sure that stayed tight. And once you've done that, you go ahead and just remove the little pom-pom maker. It kind of comes apart, but you just put it back together. It snaps back in place. And then I take those same sharp scissors and we just give a little haircut on our pom-pom until we're happy with how it looks. If you've watched my videos in the past, I used to use an iron when I did my decoupage. And this Christmas, I splurged and bought a little heat press on Amazon. And I was pleasantly surprised when I got it that the plug on it was the exact same plug that I have on my glue gun. And this worked out amazing since I am very short on plugs in my office. And I was able to just switch back and forth between the 2 tools. So if you're interested, I'll put links in the bottom of my description box. And let's get back to crafting. Now let's add some embellishments to our bunnies and our carrot. For the carrot, I'm just going to do a jute twine bow. And we're just going to glue that onto the top. Once we've done that, I'm taking my little hot gun and we're going to add the little pom-poms to our bunnies. To attach these bunnies, instead of hot gluing them to our surface, I'm going to use some magnets. And these magnets I got last year from Amazon. I like them because they're really flat and I've used them in the past because they're the perfect size for Scrabble tiles. So these were left over from a craft that I had used for that. I like the thickness. They're really, really thin. So this makes it look like you've glued them onto something, but you haven't. What to magnet these cute ornaments on? Well, I found these adorable signs at Dollar Tree and all I needed to do was flip them over. Yep, that's it. And these magnet right onto these little signs. And this is a cute little trio set that we can use for Easter. Or what I was thinking is we could make more of these fun ornaments and we could magnet them onto this cute little sign for different seasons. We could do shamrocks, we could do flowers, we could do Christmas ornaments. We could do whatever we like and we could just flip these around all year round.